feels a bit like the graveyard slot, is it they say, you know, in the middle of the afternoon, particularly those of you that have gone for 2 hours run this morning, so try and keep it light-hearted. I thought that was a fantastic finish there by Bobby, and in many ways, it's a, you know, we ought to have done that at the end, because to sum it all up, that is actually why we all run. We don't start out running thinking, oh, I might make some money, I might be famous, I might get one of the things. It's because we just really enjoy, or I certainly, and obviously Bobby, really enjoy the act of physically running. And to be able to pull back on those memories, whatever they are, you've all got them, of those good days, and you think, yeah, I did that, and no one can ever take that away from you. It's yours, and it's yours to keep. And it's another reason why, you know, sometimes you come and you do talks like this, and you think, man, yeah, it's been good. It's been a good 20 years, 25 years that I was involved in the sport. I wouldn't change any of it. You might change your session or plan something, but it's a fantastic journey. And the fact that we've got people of all ages in this room suggests that it is a journey, and it's appropriate for everyone. Having said all that, I'm going to get a little bit technical now, just try and perhaps put a little bit of, really for the coaches, but I think it's important for the athletes, some principles about planning. Bobby did mention, I think probably one of my strengths was the ability to plan, the ability to peak. So if somebody said you need to be fit, or you need to be your best on this particular day, whenever that was, that for me was a focus, and I think you know, I was able to achieve that. And sometimes over the season, you might not have too many good runs, but hopefully the best runs were the ones that were important. I like to plan better in the World Cup. It's such a big bloody hoop to go through to get there, that quite often, but my best race was probably at the trial. Plus, of course, for many years I had the inter-services, which at the time through the 80s was probably as good a race as you got, because Julian Goethe, Steve Jones, Roger Hackney, to mention just three, were all world-class runners in their own right, and I was racing them every year, about 2 or 3 weeks before either the English or Scottish national and the trial, so it was a big ask. I'm just going to do a little bit of principles, and this is, some of you will have seen these before from as national coach, make no apologies, because I think it's important to remember what we actually do when we train. Okay, if you do a training load, i.e. you've been out this morning for a 2-hour run, or you've done a set of 400s or whatever, you've done a physical amount of training. The moment you start that training, at this point, do you get fitter or less fit? You actually get less fit because you're getting tired. So you're putting a load, you're actually putting a load onto your body that makes you tired. So for example, to explain that, if you were to go and do a session of 400s at the track, and the moment you finished, you entered in a mile time trial, would you run faster in that mile time trial than if you'd have not done your set of 400s? The answer is no. So you're going to be, because you're tired. So whenever you do a training load, you're not actually getting fitter, you're getting slightly less fit for the period of time. The moment you stop training, or the moment you stop racing, is the moment your recovery starts for your next race or your next session. So you get this thing called recovery, okay? And you get, I'm not going to get technical because I'm not a physiologist, but you get a thing called supercompensation. So at some period after you've stopped training, and this can be different lengths depending on how hard you are, how old you are, how hard you've trained, blah, 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 whether you eat the right food, whether you get the right sleep, you're going to actually be slightly fitter. Because if that wasn't the case, why would you bother training? Because if it was just a straight line, you'd think, oh, why should we train? You know, so let's. And some people say rest is a good thing, and it is, but there's a limit to how much rest you can have, because if you keep resting, you're actually going to get less fit. So it's worth thinking about that when you're trying to design your training program, and I'll explain that a little bit more. Because if you do it a few times, here's the graphics, i.e. you train on a Monday, then you train again on a Tuesday, or you do a block of 3 months training, and then you do another block of 3 months training, in theory, you're going to get an improved fitness level. Is everybody comfortable with that? It's important to think about this bit below the line, and when you start training, so if this was a bigger block, a huge great train, you've done 60 200s, don't do that. The time you're going to come down here, so if it's 300 200s, you're probably going to come down here and you're not going to recover. You're going to be injured or you're going to be ill, and then you have to start the whole process again. So, this is reason it's done is it's sort of a technical thing. So, if you overtrain, train too hard for your fitness level, or your age, or whatever it might be, or you don't get the right recovery because as soon as you've done your hard race, you go out and drink 20 beers that night, okay, or you don't get enough sleep, that's going to happen, you're going to get fitness decline. And that's when you can sometimes get in that downward spiral. So you think, well, I need to train a bit harder. So you train a bit harder and it gets even worse and you get into that. If you don't really train very hard at all, you just do some light sessions, then you're not going to get much improvement. If you get it right, optimum, then you're going to get optimum improvement. That's the skill of coaching, and that's the skill as an athlete. You need to know where this green line is. And that comes with years of experience, training diaries, thinking about what you're doing, noting, using if you've got a fantastic wife like myself who says, Chris, you're training too hard, you look knackered, or you're just being lazy, get your backside out the door, or your coach, or people in your life. They're all factors that will help you find out exactly where this green line is. Just a little bit about planning, because that's the title of this afternoon session is, what do you want to achieve? I don't know. It doesn't matter what you do. So if you don't know what you're trying to achieve, it actually doesn't matter what training you do because you don't know whether you're going to achieve. You're not actually aiming for anything. So the importance of this particular slide is decide what it is that you as an athlete or you as a coach-athlete partnership or whatever want to achieve. If it's winning the Kilbarchan relays, that's fine. If it's getting to the World Cross Country Championships, that's equally fine. But decide what it is that's most important. Because you can't have 3 or 4 multiple aims. You can't say, well, I actually want to win the Kilbarchan relays, and I want to go to the World Cross Country Championships, and I want to actually win, you know, such and such half marathon, and I'd like to win this as well, because it's not going to happen, or you're going to get completely diverted with your resources. So think about your season's aims, and this can be, you can fill in these yourself, okay? But the bottom bit's the most important, so it's another slide for me, but what does this mean in terms of performance? So if your aim is to win the Scottish National Cross Country, you need to have some idea, you and your coach, what that actually means. What is the standard of the other athletes? Who's likely to be on the start line that's going to have a similar sort of aim? If you're going to want to get to the Olympic Games, you know what that means. It means you've got to run such and such, such and such. And not only that, you've got to be one of the top 3 in Britain doing it. And you've then got to work out, what does that mean? So if you've got to run 27 minutes for 10K, you've got to have a pretty good idea of what type of sessions, or whatever it is, that's going to get you to that level. My experience, I wanted to get into the British cross-country team. So I knew well, they went through various versions of trials and having a race here and a race there. Then they'll hold it in the national, and I said, which national? And they look at you down, start and go, oh, there is only one national. I said, not if you come from Scotland, it's the Welsh national, the Scottish and the So you've got to work out what is the event, and what is it that's going to, what's the selection criteria, and what, physically, what am I going to have to do to get to reach that aim? And then equally, well, what's the current performance gap? So if you're a 4-minute 1500 metre runner, and you say next season I want to win the Scottish, and traditionally the Scottish 1500's been running 3:48, you've got to find 12 seconds. And you've got to think, what is that performance gap? What does that mean to me to get me from 4 minutes to 3:48? And that's not easy. Not in terms of physics, it's not easy in terms of working out what training you need to do and what races you need to go to bridge that gap. So it's a little bit technical, but it's important that you do have that kind of thing. If you just set off in the beginning of September, think, well, I'll just start training, and hopefully by March, I'll be in some kind of shape to win the nationals. It's not going to happen, or if it does, it's going to be very, very lucky. I'm trying to sort of plan it out, think about things. And this is just a model that I use. People say, well, how do you do it? You work back. So if this is let's use the trial. If this is the trial's on March the 2nd. Okay, you think, right, what do I need? I knew that about 2 weeks before the trial, it's a 12K cross country, I like to do a road race. there happened to be a race in February called the Dewsbury 10K, and it still exists. And it's one of the reasons why I missed a couple of Scottish Championships, or didn't run as well in the Scottish Championship, because I'd go down and do either the Dewsbury 10K or another road race, because I knew that that leg speed over a slightly shorter distance would help me when it came to the trial, because the type of race it's going to be fast, it's usually relatively flat, because it's definitely the World Cross Country. And then you might have whatever race program, and the program that Bobby put forward, I don't have any problems with. I think it's a very natural, sensible progression. The challenge comes if, depending on around the time of then the E to G or one or two other races, if you're a serious senior athlete, you're probably moving up to 80, 85 mile a week by then. Can you afford to run, or are you going to run the E to G with 80 to 90 miles in your legs and accept the degradation in your own performance? And is your club going to be happy with that, and your coach going to be happy with that? Or do you compromise and say, well, actually, I'll ease off for the E to G so I can have a really good run, the club can win it, but actually you're just losing a bit of training? Now, they're questions only you can answer. But if this is your primary focus, then that should help you make those decisions. Just talk to that. And this is important. Work and family, and there's people of all ages in the thing. So some of you, this will be familiar with, some of you not yet, you've not got married or you've not got family. That makes a big difference, because you can't be off all over the place. And sometimes, certainly, probably Bobby, certainly myself, I would train in the morning if I knew I had a busy day, and I'd try and get my second session in sometimes at lunchtime if it was just a run stuff. When I came home, and I mean my boys are grown up now, but you come home and you don't want to be coming in from work at 5:30, 6 o'clock, your boys haven't seen you, and then you say, well, sorry guys, I'm off for an hour and a half spa back now. It's not particularly good for marital harmony. So now sometimes, you know, you just have to work it out, and you have to think, right, what's the best way in the overall holistic approach to achieving your performance, bearing in mind that your running career does not exist in isolation. Those of you that know, if things are going well in your family life and things are going well at work, you're likely to be running well. And if these things are not going well, it's pretty difficult to have a good running career as well, because it's your brain, it brings in all these different factors. So I'm just going to wonder if this slip to the end, get to the end bit of this, because it's a bit long. I'm not going to spend lots of time on this because it's quite technical, but I found that about 17-week period worked for me. I got to that conclusion after about 3 or 4 years as a senior. So from the start, so when I wanted to hit my peak fitness was about 16 or 17 weeks. So remember the previous slide, you work back where that is, and then you start to fill in these blocks, and you start to put together a bit of a race program. This is an idealized model. Life isn't like that, because these optimum competition times don't occur necessarily on the Scottish calendar or the English calendar, and you didn't always have those exact races when you wanted. But what this is showing is, if these are each of these is a week, so you're progressing, you're getting slightly more volume, better quality. I won't go into that detail now, but basically, whatever you do the very first week, you're going to do slightly more week 2, week 3, week 4. You then need a bit of what I'm calling here a regeneration period, because if you just keep building, eventually the body will break down. Remember that curve I showed? So you do a block of hard training, you need a little bit of recovery time for the body to bounce back. And you build it up, and there's different things you can do in here. We can talk about, you know, fartleks and all the rest of the stuff. Basically, this thing is interesting, because as you train harder, your fitness level doesn't actually go in. Potentially, there's a line here that goes up here, that's your potential fitness level. But your actual fitness level decreases, because you're getting more tired. People comfortable with that principle. So So you train hard, you train a bit hard, you train even harder, you train really hard. You're not super fit there, potentially you are, but you're actually super tired. So you have a recovery period, and then all of a sudden you stop being tired and boom, you get this compensation and you think, hey, great, that's the time to race in an ideal world. You then start the next phase, same thing happens, so on and so forth, do some sharpening, and then you get your big race, and if you've got it right, bang, out comes this fantastic performance. The downside of this is that you won't actually have very much for a peak. You've probably got 2 or 3 weeks, 2 or 3 races to do that, and then after that, you actually drop off the edge of the cliff. Or my view would be, or my experience was, that if you carried on with this progression, your body would just say, and you'd get injured, or even better, you'd probably get ill before you got injured, because you can recover from illness in probably a week. If you get a bad Achilles or a calf, it might take you 3 or 4 weeks or longer. So that's really just an idealised training program, but there's an awful lot of information in there, which, as coaches and athletes, you can take away. And my advice to you would be, if you don't do this, you really are just running down a bit of a blind alley. You're just hoping that lots and lots of training will eventually give you a good result. It doesn't. It might do by chance, but if you don't know, if you have a really good result and you don't know why you've had a really good result, it's extremely difficult to replicate it. And that's really what this is all about. Saying, I know if I do this, followed by this, this and this, and I do these kind of things in the taper, well, that's what happens. And that, for me, is what happened, 8 times in terms of the trial, and I was in reserve twice. So over a period of about 16 seasons, 10 of them I was good enough to get into around the British team, that kind of standard. The difficulty I had, and absolutely recognise it, put my hand up, is of course the World Cross Country was about here, and by then if I'd done the inter-service, the Navy and the inter-service and the trial, and or an English or Scottish national, I was just getting pretty knackered by the World Cross Country. So I never really ran great in the World Cross Country, which is a slight disappointment. It is a disappointment, but there's reasons why, but it's just one of those factors. The way to overcome that is if you're somebody like Freya, or you really do establish yourself on the UK scene, like a Steph 12 or what have you, you might not actually have to jump through some of these hoops. You might not have to run the trial. Or you can get through the trial just cruising because you're good enough to do that. I wasn't in that category. I knew I could get into the British team, but I was never a shoo-in. I could never say to the selectors, look, do you know what, I'm not going to run the trial, just give me one of the 3 discretionary places. That's not going to happen. If you're in that position, then great. And that's why if you can get to that level, success breeds success, because all of a sudden a whole bunch of doors open up to you that weren't there before. And for those of you that aspire to that level, and I'm sure there's people in here that are physically capable of doing that, get down to England and get racing in England and get kicking the ass of these other English guys, because then you might be in a position to be able to say, I can't make the trial or whatever, or you have a slightly below par run, but because you've got that credibility, you might get into the British team. And that's what prevents you then coming off. You can shift everything. Have you take any questions on that? Because I've covered a lot of ground in a few slides about the planning process. Does it make sense? Is the principle sound? Yes. Challenge you have is, there's lots of challenges. The other challenge you have, and I've been there, we've all been there, is your club wants you to do this, that and the other. And that's only a decision that you can make, your relationship with the club, how you build that up. And there's times when I said to Spango or Inverclyde or in the old days Derby or the Royal Navy, look, I'm not going to do that. Oh, come on, Chris, you've got to come and learn and, blah, blah. No, I'm sorry, it's not part of the plan. I'm doing a week of 100 miles. I'm not going to try for 50 miles as well to do a race. Expose myself to someone like Bobby or one of the other athletes that, because you're on a really tight, you get your ass kicked by somebody that normally wouldn't beat you. They get confidence, you lack a bit of confidence, plus it's not in the plan. So So you have to think that through, and it is a challenge. I always used to counter that and say, yeah, but wouldn't it be great if our club had somebody in the British team or come the national, then I will be running in the club vest, and that's the payback time. Just a little bit about competition. You can read that for yourself. Okay, sometimes you do have to ask these tough questions. Have that discussion with your coach. Have that discussion with the club secretary or whoever picks your team. Okay. The reason I bring that to a seminar like this is I assume and I hope that the majority of people in this room are aspiring to be senior athletes of a good standard, of an international standard. So those questions are important. This isn't undermining club athletes. When I started running for Canadian at the end of my life, great, I was there every, if the race was in Fife, I knew there'd be good sandwiches after, so I was going to go there because that's really what I was doing it for, is that camaraderie. But when you're at the business end of your career, you need to ask these questions. That's just a figure. Don't worry about these fancy Eurostats. I think that's really all I was going to say on that, because a little bit about why did I survive so long or stick with the sport. Yeah, I absolutely loved it. It's a really, really good sport. The best thing about, well, one of the best things about running, you're with like-minded people, and you, by and large, you get out of what you put in. So if you put the effort in, you'll get the benefits out of it. You know yourself whether you're training hard or not. You know yourself whether you're working at a maximum level or not. Excuse me. So, by and large, there's not much luck involved in this sport. It really is you and how you get the best out of yourself. And I think Bobby's slide sums up all the reasons. Plus, I'm losing my voice. I'm going to happy to take any questions.
We've got about 15 minutes before we need to
I've got a burning question for both of you. World cross country's changing. It's only maybe second year. Okay. European cross country is going to be a key thing in actually getting you selected and targeted for other things within the UK. If that was a situation when you guys were training, how would you have reorganised your year? What would it, that would have changed totally your philosophy, Bobby. It would have influenced your philosophy. Be interested in a quick response about how you might restructure it. Because it's something that's causing us major issues at the moment.
The problem is the competition structure domestically as well wouldn't help, would work against you. So that's difficult. I mean, I would tear up the plan, obviously. What I've got here doesn't work with that, then the relay season can be used the way I would have used it in the past. You'd have to start a bit earlier, and you need to, again, have your target event and then work back from that. There need to be some key races earlier in the year, really. Yeah, I mean, I would have to sit down, superimpose what I've done previously with what's there in terms of competition opportunities, and then try and work some way through it. But it would still be the same basic, build up your basic endurance base, basic level of fitness. For me, I would still try and have some sort of conversion of high mileage hill work intensity, and then come out the other end with some key races to move forward. But I'd need to sit down and look at what was available in terms of programmes, but it would certainly completely change your approach to competition. And I know somebody like Eric Hawkins from my club, who's run well or reasonably well in trials for the Europeans over the last couple of years, and made that kind of target. He obviously didn't follow that kind of traditional pattern that I put up there, because he had to be at, he had to be in a reasonably peak form by Liverpool in the trials, so therefore his end of track break was earlier, and I think he did some road races before that, and he didn't do as many of the relays as I would have done. He was more selective in terms of that, so it's a bit of a challenge.
It's a really difficult. I mean, you can only talk from your own experiences. And I was very much a track in the summer, apart from the hill racing or mountain running towards the end of my career. So immediately, if you start taking that approach, you're effectively creating two tiers of athletes, and you're creating the track athlete, and you're creating the cross-country athlete, or the athlete that wants to run well in the European, because I can't see, the majority of the decent track races are towards the end of the summer, and particularly if you're aspiring for European, Commonwealth, or Olympics or World. So how you can, you might run the, if you finish your track season, say in late August, unless you take a break, you either go through and do the European, you have to take a break somewhere, which then means the year that you peak for the European, if there's a World Cross Country the following spring, you're scuppered, because you can't get a break in. So, I'm not sure that it's well thought through. And I think the problem, I can see the World Cross, the IAAF, I mean this is sort of political stuff, but the IAAF are trying to make the World Cross, well I don't know what they're trying to do really, because they're trying to make it more competitive by only having it every second year. This isn't the way to sort of go about it. I think they're creating some real difficulties, because we can talk all this theory about planning, it just throws it out the window.
Yeah, a better alternative would be to have an alternative European Worlds at the same point every year. Yeah. I'm not saying that's
like the mountain running do it, a sort of uphill and then and up and down. So you have a Worlds one year and then a European the following year. Because if you go and do a European cross country, if you've come off a track season or you've not bothered with the track and you've started your prep in, you have to start in July to be fit for November to early December.
That's like Derek, you can never run as well on the track. I think one of the contributing reasons is to be focused on doing it.
It's going to completely skew the traditional way of things.
Sorry, I just wanted to throw it in. To skew your picture. Sorry.
Just a twofold question. One, given that you never had the privilege of being sponsored and lottery money and everything else, is it the fact that current Scottish ability is what Sam Massavini once said, if God didn't put it in, we can't get it out. And it's one of the basic fundamentals is that we just don't have, with only one male athlete faster than Paula Radcliffe, we just don't have the ability. Or is it that the basic training programs, people are not willing to hurt themselves? Or is it that we've become frightened of the Africans and that we now see that we've got to have specialized training abroad, or specialized, having to have sleeping oxygen tents and things like that? What is it that if you had had access to in your era, you think would have benefited you?
I mean, I'll go first. I think we both got sponsorship, kit sponsorship at some points in our career, and I think we both received a bit of lottery funding. That's nice. It doesn't make one iota of difference. The amount of lottery funding you get, and all the youngsters, this is my personal view, you still have to go out and do the bloody hard work. You can throw as much money as you like at someone. Where it perhaps helps is, and it's not lottery money, what you actually need is good physio support, and you need a good competition program. So that if you need to get abroad to raise a decent 10,000 in this spring, that's where you need the support to either go across to California or wherever the good 10,000 metre races are. But I mean, coming back to the issue, I think society has changed. It's an easy way out. There's more sports available. People want instant gratification.